This is a re-education. We do want our abuelas, our tías, our tíos to be part of these conversations.
My family came through a legal process. They worked really hard to get here.
What is it that makes somebody walk thousands of miles to a country where all dreams can come true?
I don't doubt anymore that a Latino can be a president.
When we go to church, I want to feel something, but I don't feel it anymore in the Roman Catholic Church.
I don't think the country is as racist as we are being led to believe that it is.
It is a door of opportunity, and we must seize upon it.
Somebody out there will always tell us, porque eres Latina, you're not going to be able to make it. If we want to change our reality, we have to take it upon ourselves to change it.
Funding for Take on America with OZY provided in part by the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, the Charles Koch Foundation, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
All right. Hello and welcome. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I'm Carlos Watson. I'm the editor of OZY. We've been traveling the country, holding town halls with a little bit of a twist. Whether it's been in Baltimore, where we've gotten together with black men, or with white women in Nashville, each of our town halls has featured a section of society that's regularly grouped together as a voting bloc. But as we've come to find out, even in a room full of people who on the surface may share the same background or skin color, the similarities are often only skin deep, which of course brings us here to New York City, where we've gathered 100 Latinos, many of you with your families, where Latino culture is woven so tightly into the tapestry of the city. So tonight, New York, we're going to show your take on America. Our first topic of the night has become a hot-button issue that's divided the nation. Now, there are an estimated 11 million unauthorized immigrants residing in the U.S., with about 3/4 being from Mexico and Central American countries. Now, since President Trump came into office, he's brought sweeping changes to the way that undocumented immigration is handled in this country. Now, OZY was on the ground with folks on both sides of the issue. I want you to take a look at what people had to say.
This Home Depot is where a large amount of day laborers gather. Illegal immigration in America, it's gotten out of hand. It's been a number of years that I've been talking and fighting against illegal immigration. Statistically speaking, illegal aliens commit more crimes than citizens. There are literally thousands of people that are killed by people who are illegally in the country. I was brought up Roman Catholic, and the nun that taught me, Sister Jackie, always meant a lot to me. It kind of gets me hard over here. Sister Jackie was killed by someone illegally in this country. He ran her over and left her on the side of the road to die. I believe if we had a better immigration policy, not only would Sister Jackie be here today, but there would be tens of thousands of more people alive in this country. As soon as I found out what happened, I got involved with the issue big time. See, I'm looking in the rearview mirror, I see someone getting into one of the cars already. There is a number of ICE you can call, but it's like talking into the wind. If I come across something, I would get the town code enforcement involved with it. I'd like to think that I got a number of people deported. I'm sorry, you're here. You've been here for 20, 25 years, but not my problem. No one told you to come to a country illegally. That's not racist. It's up to us, as in we the people, who say who can come in and who can't come in. I will keep doing it until they are deported. It is my country, not theirs.
La mayoría de gente aquí, latina, viene a trabajar y salir adelante. No son criminales. Que venga alguien y me diga, go back to your country, eso sí me molesta porque no es justo. En Honduras, en el barrio donde nosotros vivíamos, era como muy peligroso. Una muchacha que fue violada por uno de los miembros de la pandilla.
La conocíamos y entonces nos sentíamos muy asustadas de que algún día o le pasara a ella, o una prima, o un familiar de nosotros.
La única escapatoria que yo tenía en mi cabeza, salir de Honduras. Ahora que mi hermana y yo tenemos la residencia, pues eso es un alivio, pero todavía seguimos preocupados por mi padrastro y mi mamá. ¿Qué le ayuda, mami?
Pela los plátanos y los parte hacia la mitad, ¿sabes? Sí.
¿Tiene miedo del ICE?
Sí tengo miedo, porque no tengo un estatus legal. Me da miedo que puedan venir acá y llevarnos a...
¡Sorpresa! Happy birthday. Nosotros somos una familia, todavía vivimos juntos todos. Pensar el hecho de que mi mamá pueda ser deportada y quedarme yo con mi hermana y con la baby, eso sí me asusta. Nosotros aquí venimos a contribuir, no venimos a destruir.
Joining us now, their take on the issue, Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and Omar Navarro, Republican candidate for Congress in California's 43rd Congressional District, right outside of Los Angeles. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Mayor Cruz, I'll start with you. What did you think when you saw those two pieces on the immigration question?
There was a lot of pain on either side. And then when I looked around and you look at people's eyes, there was a lot of pain. There was a lot of teary eyes in the room. It doesn't matter, I'm sorry that he lost this nun. We're all sorry. Nobody wants to see people die. But we have to think, why do people leave their country to go to another country? This is not an issue that is only pertaining to the United States. This is an issue that is pertaining Europe and other countries, right now in Latin America. What is it that makes somebody walk thousands of miles in order to come to a country that portrays itself as the beacon where all dreams can come true? This bracelet that I have over here was given to me by a dreamer in San Antonio, Texas. She didn't know she was brought into the United States without having the appropriate papers. So she found out when she was 16 and she tried to get a driver's license and her parents told her, no, you can't because you don't have the appropriate documents to be here. Now, she grew up in Texas. She grew up alongside Peter or Mary or anyone that was born in Texas. She grew up living in a culture that taught her that she could be whatever she could work for. And now, all of a sudden, she is automatically stigmatized.
So, Omar, how do you hear that? You support President Trump. A significant part of his platform was build the wall, make them pay for it. How do you hear Mayor Cruz, and how do you think about the immigration issue today?
Well, I definitely see a lot of the pain from many people that are here today. I mean, everybody has heated emotions, and I'm here because I want people to understand, I actually care about these issues, and I'm willing to discuss things. We're living in a country right now where people are not having conversations. They're attacking each other over their political ideology, and that is wrong. We have to bring people back together. There just has to be a sensible solution to immigration policies in our country. And I don't think working against the President of the United States is in the interest of Americans and in the interest of people that want to come here and have a better life. I think it's in the interest to have that relationship with the President, working with him and having coffee with him and making sure that we're building forth immigration policy that's actually going to help people, not divide people.
Yes to the wall or no to the wall?
Having a wall is essential. I think it's important.
No to the wall and no to tearing children apart from a mother's breast.
Well, I don't think that we're for tearing apart children. We're not for that though in any way. No one's for dividing children. Let's be honest.
If you go into Congress, you won't be against them.
Please hear me out. If you look at, there's a national security issue too. I have a degree in criminal justice, and when you look at a lot of problems, there's a lot of transportation from drugs going through the border. You have known terrorist groups that are operating outside the country that are being paid by the cartels, and they're protecting these people. Now, if you have children that are being used, they can be used to traffic drugs, they can be used to traffic weapons, they can be used for something. How do we know what's really going on? In Los Angeles alone, we have a lot of children that are being trafficked. And that's happening every day through the ports of Long Beach, the ports of San Pedro, to the ports of San Francisco. That's a concern of me and it should be a concern of every American that is here.
Carlos, let me tell you one thing. One thing that's important is that if we're going to have this dialogue, people have to know where we stand. It's a simple question. Yes or no to the wall? I say no. You're trying
I say yes to the wall because we need to enforce our immigration laws.
Yes or no to tearing families apart?
I'm not for tearing families apart, but we have to protect our national security.
But then the words have to follow the actions. Because if I say no, but then all of a sudden I'm for internment camps, then it creates a difficulty in the dialogue. Dialogue has to come from facts. And facts
are that a country without borders falls apart.
Facts do matter.
A country without borders falls apart.
Let me open this up to the audience for a second. How many of you support the president's thought that we need to build a wall? Show of hands. Handful of people. How many of you believe that the president's policy is inhumane?
My name is and I'm an immigrant. Like, I was brought here at the age of 4. I crossed with my mom, and it was really hard walking and me not knowing what was going on. And when I got here, I was like I didn't know anything because I was so used to Mexico. And it was only me, my mom, and my dad until I had my little brother. So my dad passed away 9 months ago, and now it's really hard to I'm a senior in high school, so it's really hard for me to go to college out of state because my mom has to pay double the price because I don't have a social security number. So I oppose to what Trump has been saying about immigrants because it bothers me a lot, and I don't really support building the wall.
Give me your name.
Justice Lopez, I'm a social studies teacher. I want to just ensure that took a lot of bravery for her to come up like that. So could we please just honor that in that space and that we could make sure that there are people whose lives are literally on the line when we're debating this. And didn't share this, but the reason why her father passed away was because he was afraid to go to the hospital to get checked because of his status. And he passed away because he was afraid. Nobody should be afraid. So we celebrate that bravery that this took for this young lady to come up to this stage and share that story. And I hope everybody in this space honors and respects that.
Thank you.
I'm in favor of the wall. And let's do the facts that seems to be discarded because there's always an emotional element thrown into it. And the facts are tossed out the door. So the children that came in here during that recent migration, I think it was 140 or 112, I think 112. And out of that 112, through the investigations, there was a large percentage of those people that were not, by DNA proof, were not related to those kids. And then, when they were going through the process to release them, to put them back with the parents, those adults disappeared. Now, there's a large percentage of those families that say, no, this is my child, and I'm staying with my child. That's fine. But let's do the facts, and let's not discard one over the other, because there's two facts going on, and you want to put emotion over true facts, that they're all related. No, they're not. That's been proven.
Two things. Number one, proven by whom? And number two, this is about people that left, not because they didn't have anything better to do, but because some of them, their lives were in danger. Yes, and in fact, there are children that are brought, not by their parents, but by another adult, parents that pay for their children to come. So does there have to be a path to citizenship? Of course, a sensible path to citizenship.
Young lady here, would you give me your name, please?
Natalia Saavedra. I think it's easy to, disconnect yourself from the situation when you don't have to experience it yourself. My sister is an immigration attorney. She was down in Dili. These kids have no rights. If they get sick, they have to wait online for 8 to 9 hours, and then the doctor sees them, and the doctor gives them no medicine. They say, take water and honey. And it's so easy to disconnect yourself, but each and every one of us could be going through this if we would have been brought here different ways. So, it's easy to say, oh, the kids aren't being separated from their families, or they're not even related, when you don't even have to experience that.
Do you think the amount of frustration over immigration would be very different if instead of 3/4 of the immigrants who we're talking about being from Mexico and Central America, they were from Europe, maybe from Sweden? Raise your hand if you think there'd be less opposition? And raise your hand if you think it would be the same or less. All right, who said come on? Okay, let me hear from you then. Let me hear from you. Talk to me. Give me your name and talk.
My name is Led Black, and that's ridiculous because, first of all, I can't call him president. He's 45, right? He don't deserve that at all. And he even said it. He says, we come from S-hole countries, right? He says, why we can't get him from Sweden? So that's his own words. He's a racist. Like, let's not stop lying. Let's stop playing. He started with Mexicans are rapists, right? He called the first black president, doubted his legitimacy, right? It's time and time again. When do we stop playing a game and call a spade a spade? The president, 45, is a racist. And if you support him, you're a racist as well.
Hello, good evening. I'm DJ Bambona from Brooklyn, New York. There's a problem with this pattern that the US has been doing with targeting people of color, targeting groups, immigrant groups that are non-white throughout history. Like when 9/11 had passed, Middle Eastern communities were the number one target. So I want to kind of put that in the head. Why is this happening over and over again? And that's all I want to say, because that's like the larger picture for me too.
You know, my family came from Mexico and Cuba, and being accused of being a racist myself when, I'm not racist. I'm not hateful towards anybody. I'm here to try to have a discussion with everybody that is here. I'm trying to understand the other side. And at the same time, we're a nation of laws. My family came through a legal process. It took so many years.
Legal or illegal?
Legal process, a legal process. And it took many years. It took 5 to 8 years for them to even get to the country. And they worked really hard to get here. And when they got here and they achieved that merit, they now see that people can just cross that line and go illegally, and guess what happens? Guess what happens? Now they feel that they're undervalued. There are a lot of Americans that are out there that came through that legal process that now feel like their hard work in assimilating and going through a process is not appreciated.
Here, I saw a bunch of hands go up. Give me your name.
Hi, my name is Melissa. Is there a difference with families that may have the money to go through that legal process, like you say? There's a lot of families that don't have the resources to do it that way. And they need to get out of their country because they need to get out of their country. Yeah. It's not because it's a choice, like, hey, tomorrow I'm gonna go to America. No.
Exactly, I feel that pain. I definitely see that. That's why there's gotta be immigration reform. That's why there's gotta be restructuring in our government. We gotta change those policies. But again, if we're fighting the president every step of the way, how are we supposed to get anything done?
Yes.
I'm Paola Ramos. My question would be to you. If you were in a neighborhood where your son or your daughter or your mother or your father were at risk of being raped or walking in and being killed, would you move from that neighborhood?
I was born in Inglewood, California. I lived there a big portion of my life. And I saw a lot of crime and I saw a lot of poverty. And I'm giving you my life experience from what I've experienced and what I've seen. And I would, because I'm able to do that. I'm able to move. I'm able to decide that. Because I live there in Inglewood. I could go straight from Inglewood to living in Hawthorne if I wanted to living in Torrance, to living anywhere else in my community.
Omar, but answer that directly, because obviously the president has called the situation in Honduras a national emergency. And so
to compare the community that I live in to living outside the country in another country where the laws don't apply, we're not the police of the world. We're not there to police the whole world. We're not there we have to protect our country, our laws, our people in our country legally.
Mayor, your final thoughts as you hear, because you clearly hear Omar's strong feelings about this and his strong sense that while he may feel sad and may feel empathy for people who are in difficult situations, his perspective is that there have to be laws and that there's some real risk if we don't reform the current immigration system.
The solution starts with what we're doing here right now, which is finding a way to talk to each other, but to recognize in each other and in our differences, profound differences that we can have, that the tapestry of democracy is woven with every single thread that is here. And we have to find a common ground. And that common ground does not get built by stumping and stepping on other people's dignity.
Okay, all right, we're gonna have to leave that there for now, but please, if you want to continue the conversation, join us on Facebook. Go to Take on America with Ozzy on Facebook. A big thank you to Mayor Cruz. Thank you to Omar Navarro. Please give them a round of applause. No matter what side you're on, please give a big round of applause. Very appreciative for that conversation. All right, next we turn to a discussion that you've probably had around the dinner table, perhaps with your abuelo, perhaps with your abuela. From religion to relationships, how is Latino American culture changing within the new generation? Take a look at what people are saying around the country, plus some of the media coverage on the issue.
There's vast variety shaping what it means to be Latinx in our mainstream culture, from the millennial generation to previous generations before.
My grandparents, they had a really tough life. Every generation has gotten better since then, for sure.
Older generations, they are super Catholic.
Para mí la religión es muy importante.
You stick with your own race. You don't go outside your race.
The younger generation of men, they're respecting women's decisions and now taking that, role and lowering their ego, essentially.
We were told how to dress. We were never given a choice.
Ya no hay mucho respeto a las personas adultas.
The millennial generation, if we see a problem, we mobilize.
Sometimes older people are just stuck in how they do things. Just going along to get along ain't never gonna get us nowhere.
All right, please welcome to the stage actress Rosie Perez and Daniel Garza, who's the president of Libre. A big hand. Welcome. Thank you. Daniel, do you see much of a generation gap? And in particular, do you see that Latino millennials tend to be perhaps more liberal politically?
I think so. I think they're more liberal politically. I think they're more informed, more educated on issues. They have access instantly to information. I grew up at a time when there was no cell phones. There was no pagers even in the 80s, right? And there was a lot of connectivity. Familias were still large in the Latino community. And so we went for Saturday afternoons at the park with my tios and tias. We visited our tios and tias in their homes for hours on end. And that social connectivity has sort of diminished. It's been substituted by social media to a certain extent, but this is beautiful that we can connect this way and come together and engage, right? And have that kind of conversation. But there's no question that there has been a generational difference based on that.
Let me hear from a couple of folks about differences that you see between the generations.
Hi, my name is Shade Furman. I'm 25 years old, maybe millennial age. It's a really nuanced space, because information is wide open. But I think that because people have had the platform, there has been an inclusivity that no one has seen ever before. People have been able to claim Afro-Latinidad. They've been able to say that I'm trans, I'm non-binary, I don't believe in these things, or I'm taking on new facts that are communities from far away. And imagine, those platforms were never available in the 80s and the 90s. Everyone was actually spitting on those people, if you think about it. So I think that when all this information is happening, the platforms are to be inclusive to older generations, to have that open dialogue, because if not, we do want our abuelas, our tias, our tios to be part of these conversations, because this is a re-education.
Can I respond to that? I think that she's absolutely right. If you were a kid and you felt that you wanted to transition and it's 1980, you would have felt all alone in the world, and you would have stuffed those feelings back into the closet, and you would have went to the church and put on that facade, and the church said this is wrong and this is wrong, and you would just eat yourself up to the point where possible suicide. Right? So nowadays, with the information highway, you go online and someone says, oh, I feel just like you. And so does this person, and so does Bob, and so does Juanette, and so does this person, and Ricky, and me too. And so what Hoppy Cece's thought, the younger people look to the church and go, wait a minute, there's more people than myself out here are feeling the same way. Why are you telling me it's wrong if I'm just not the only person who is wrong? So what's the solution to that, right? I think that the church needs to change. I think the church needs to grow. I mean, I do. Because when you sit and you talk to people, to young people, you can't lecture them. You have to listen to them. And you have to decipher, wait a minute, you know, do they have a point? Do they have a point? And is the old system antiquated? There's a door of opportunity and that we must seize upon it, you know? And, you know, it's as simple as that. You know, I have a relative in my family and she was lesbian, you know, and she got beat for it. She's not a lesbian anymore. She's married, she has kids and everything like that. She's not a happy person, you know? And that's it. That's the end of the road for her. And it's like her offspring, I don't want to give the person away, her offspring said, Mommy, you don't have to live this lie anymore.
Hang on a second, I'm going to hear a little bit from the audience. Give me your name and tell me your thoughts as you hear both this specific question and the larger question about whether there's a real generational divide.
Yes, so my name is Melissa and I have an 11-year-old boy. And I grew up going to church every morning because I went to a Catholic school. I was an altar server, you know. I wanted my son to do the same thing, and he's just not for it. And I have to respect that, you know, at the end of the day. I try to instill it, but when we go to church, it's boring. You know, there's nothing, like I don't feel anything. And it bothers me because I want to feel something. And I want to feel spiritually connected to something, but I don't feel it anymore in the Roman Catholic Church.
Melissa, what do you think happens if the Roman Catholic Church loses Latino millennials? What happens to the church? Is it?
Ooh, we are like the business of that. Like we buy statues, you know, we like incense, like, you know.
People agree with that?
You gotta get the bad juju out of the house. Like, you know, that's like, you know, like even to this day, whenever anything goes bad, we pray. You know, when things go good, we pray. So I feel like if they lose us, they lose it all, really.
I too, you know, struggle. I told my nephew, God rest his soul, he passed away, but there was a very meaningful conversation that we had when he was still with us. And we were watching politics and they were talking about religion and what have you. And he looked at me and he said, how come we don't go to church? And I said, well, because I haven't found a church that is right for me yet. And he goes, do you believe in God? And I paused. This was the kid who was like my son. And I didn't want to lie to him anymore, right? And I turned to him and I looked at him. Tears started streaking down my eyes and I go, I'm not sure. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I'm not sure, because what I was taught is not holding its weight anymore. And I remember looking at him, he grabbed my hand and he said, I don't know either. And I said, let's explore it.
I love that he's
Let's explore it. You know, and that's how you begin. That's how you begin the change of being just freaking honest about it, you know? And, you know, like I always tell everyone, I'm a recovering Catholic. And they said, what does that mean? I said, because I don't want to let go of all of it, but a lot of it is just I need to let go. I've let go, you know? But what I want to hold on to is not the fantasy of religion and the dogma and all that. I don't romanticize it anymore. You know what I mean? But it doesn't mean that I'm a less of a person because I don't walk into a building that's a church.
Give me your name and let me hear your thoughts.
My name is Marissa, and my thoughts on the church are that I think with younger generations, a lot of it now is cultural. So we didn't necessarily grow up in the church, but you know that you have to get baptized, you have to do your first communion, your confirmation, and those are all big celebratory events. But other than that, we're going to church Easter, Christmas, like the major holidays. But it is more of a cultural thing than it was with the older generations. I also think that with the generational gap, a lot of that is due to the internet, like you said. And I think a lot of it is also just due to younger generations not trying to keep up with the Joneses so much. As with the older generations, you know, it was always, ¿qué van a decir la gente? And, you know, si fulana te ve. And with now the younger generations, a lot of us feel more comfortable with who we are and not necessarily trying to fit that mold. The older generations and the church need to adapt if they want to keep us involved.
I just want to say that the status of men has changed, right? So like my dad, Like he wouldn't even have to pick up the phone, right? Like the phone will ring right here, and he'd call my mom. Nah, la telefono. It's right there. So he'd have to do laundry. My mother would cook for him, does everything for him. Like now, I'm married to a modern Dominican woman. I gotta do dishes. I gotta do a lot of stuff. It's changed a lot. It's definitely changed a lot.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Would you hand that back there, please? Okay.
Hi, my name is Jennifer. So kind of exactly what he was saying is the fact of like expectation now has like changed, you know? Like I feel like traditionally our parents kind of went with religion and went with these morals that they were taught, but now we have, you know, even going back to like just the spirituality and love that kind of like all intertwines together. And I think it's just the dynamics completely changed. Women now are loving themselves, not being as insecure, standing up and saying, this is not right, I want to be treated fairly. Machismo, like men, you know, machista men have just kind of lowered their egos and they've been like, okay, you know what, it's cool, I could be a stay-at-home dad, this might not be that bad.
How many of you agree with her that that's happened? How many of you agree with her that machismo has lowered meaningfully?
I almost think that machismo has evolved in its definition. Because
you don't want to let it go. You don't want to let it go.
Well, hold on, because as a Latino, right?
Okay.
I'm surrounded by strong women. Right. My mother-in-law, my wife, my sisters are I live in a matriarchal, setting. And I think machismo now is like guys want to show their manhood by doing crazy stuff, like racing cars, getting in fights and doing stupid things. I mean, that's almost like, I don't see that kind of machismo that I saw in my parents, especially my grandparents.
Women are badasses, okay? Women enjoy racing.
It's meta.
You have women in NASCAR, you have women in boxing, you have women in soccer, you have women in MMA, so for men to say, well, I express my machismo through all that is just to me. So, I think that what happens is going back to school, because it starts with the very, very young. First of all, what I'm seeing now with young Latinos is that they're identifying themselves more as American. They will never let go of the Latino label. But yet, how they move, how they vibe, how they walk in the world is becoming more of a global sense and also an American sensibility. And some of that is fantastic and some of that breaks my heart, just to be honest, right? But it starts in the schools, because I remember when I was a child, when a teacher would ask a question and my hand would go up, she would always choose a boy's hand over mine. And there was times where my hand would be the only hand up and she would go, anyone? Anyone? And it's the socialization of boys and girls that starts in elementary that is the issue that we need to attack. There are boys' sports and girls' sports. It's sports, period. And the thing is that, there's one day that I would love, because I love the Girl Scouts, even though I couldn't afford to be in it, right? Because we were so poor, we were on the rating list for the projects, you know what I'm saying? So, but here's the thing, I hope that one day, whether it be the millennials or whether it be the generation after them or the one before, there's no more Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. There are just Scouts. Because once you keep putting boys and girls together in the same realm, they are going to find their differences and their similarities. And what will happen is that the division of power will level.
That would be different. All right. Talk to me about race and colorism in the Latino community.
Uh-oh.
Everybody ready for that? Yeah? Okay. I'm going to come back here. Let me hear it.
I guess we could just talk about just traditionally. I mean, me growing up, I'm obviously a white Latina. I grew up in a family that it was not okay to date someone out of my, I guess, white Latina race. Even though my dad was indigenous, he was trigueño, and I'd be like, Dad, well, you're darker just as well. What would be the problem? For him, it was not. It was not acceptable. Whatever he went through in his own life and past experience, which told him that it was not okay.
Do you think there's a meaningful amount of colorism or racism in the
Yeah, it comes also within self-hate, within the brown and black community as being Latinos. Like, that's that self-hate just as well. The hair, the color of their skin, it's not acceptable. And what's crazy is that we are the middle area. Latinos, we are basically the majority in the sense of all races, and, ethnicity is what brings us together. Our culture, our music, our food, and that's what's important, not outside of that.
Let me come over here.
So regarding what you were talking about, I would say I was actually blessed on how I grew up. So I'm a Dominican, Afro-Latina, born and raised in the Bronx. And I grew up with parents that were, my mom was pretty educated. My father was not. But they raised me with an amazing culture and an amazing history as a child. So knowing being an Afro-Latina is not a current thing, I knew that when I was in high school in the 90s because my parents were, talking to me about our history, right? My father was a 5th generation of Dominicans, so he knew his history of that his family were, slaves, and the other part were from Spain. So I think all of that really starts up in the household. All people of all color were accepted in my house. And I think it was also because my father experienced racism, not in his country, he experienced it here for the first time as a man of color. And he didn't understand it. It makes sense to him because in Dominican Republic, while they had some racism, he still didn't really ever experience it the way people were getting it here. So he was more open to, you don't look at people for their color, right? Or for how they look. You accept people and you just love people as they are.
As a Dominican, I think Dominicans have a certain kind of self-hatred, right? I think because we share an island with Haiti, we could always say they're black. And I'll give you an instance. When I was a kid, fight night was a big deal in my house, right? So this is guy, he's for all intents and purposes a black man, right? But he's Dominican, and his nickname is Rubio, meaning blondie. That's a joke because he's so dark, right? So he's watching the fight, and he's like, look at that black guy, look at that black guy. The black guy is lighter than him, right? So I said to you, hermano, tú eres prieto. I said, you're black. He goes, I'm not black. Yo soy blanco oscuro. He said, I'm dark-skinned white. That doesn't even exist. But that goes to show you the lengths that some Dominicans will go to kind of not say they're black.
Because this is a real issue. And sadly, even in today's modern world, we still have vestiges of that kind of colorism and racism. But I hope, as a community, as Latinos, that doesn't hold us back. But we do have to address it, obviously. But I think we have to see the bigger picture, that this barrier, that barrier. Let's attack them como comunidad.
Yeah, but part of attacking it is to saying it, calling a spade a spade.
Sin duda.
And saying that in the Latino community, whether you're from the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Cuba, wherever, Mexico, hello, there are black, Afro, Latino, however you want to call them, that have been marginalized, that have been stigmatized, that have been told straighten your hair, lighten your skin. One of my favorite baseball players, he went from black to white. Why? He had all the money in the world. So
you calling Sammy Sosa out?
I'm calling Sammy, and I love Sammy. Okay. And the thing is that I'm not here to say you're wrong, Sammy. I'm here to say I understand where it comes from. That's what I mean about coming and listening and understanding and stop the judging and stop the finger pointing and say, why did he do that? We're all guilty for why he did that. We are all guilty of it because, I'm
glad you said that we're all guilty.
Yeah, we are.
The finger pointing is coming from all over the place.
And I'm just loving, I just have to say to the millennials and the generation that are following you, I'm loving that y'all are rocking the natural hair. Go. Thank you. I love it.
All right, I'm going to leave it at that. If you're loving this topic and you want to join in more, hit us on Facebook. Go to Take On America with OZY on Facebook. A big thanks to Rosie Perez, to Daniel Garza. Really appreciate both of you. Absolutely terrific. Big round of applause. All right, finally, we turn tonight towards the future now. It's been predicted by 2043, whites will make up less than half of the population here in the U.S., with the Latino community becoming the biggest minority group in the country. But when will that status be reflected in our political leadership? Will there, in fact, be a Latino president in our lifetime? Now, we asked folks from around the country. Take a look at what they said, also what the media is saying as well.
I am absolutely certain we will have a Latino candidate for president.
I can't think of a single minority that is actually well represented in government.
Well, now the time has come for our generation
to lead the way towards a new American century.
They're looking at me saying, oh my gosh, if she can do it, I can do it too.
I think we were ready for a Latinx president 50 years ago.
Are you going to be nicer to the president?
I don't think he knows how to deal with a girl from the Bronx.
It's highly likely that the first Latino president has been born.
American politics is still a good old boys club for older white men.
You don't see an inclusive America? Not anymore. I don't see it.
This is not an end, this is the beginning.
All right, joining us now is Carmen Yulín Cruz, Mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and Daniel Garzos, the President of the Libre Initiative. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure. Mayor, what do you think about that question? Are we going to see a Latino president in the next decade?
Well, first, I hope we see a sensible president pretty soon. That's one thing. Latinos have to organize. 27 million Latinos did not vote. That's the estimate in 2016. So we have to do a lot more organizing. We have to do a lot more engagement. And we have to understand that if we don't vote, and mind you, I live in Puerto Rico, I cannot vote for the President of the United States, nor do I want to vote for the President of the United States, because that would mean that we would be a state. And that's a whole other program in OZY. But the Latino population really needs to be engaged and to ensure that the people that get elected are people that have at heart the best interests of the Latino population, and that it's that agenda that is followed. There's a lot of names that are, going around of good Latino people, and what we have to look at is what is that platform that they're going to provide not only for the Latino population, but for everybody.
Dan, do you think the first Latino president will be Republican or Democrat?
Probably a Republican. I say that because there are more Latinos elected to high office who are conservative than, or Republican than are Democrat now. And we got really close with Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio in this last go-around. So I think they're going to be back the next time it's, there's an open primary, and they stand a terrific chance. Having said that, as a Latino, I've been very proud, on the one hand, with our progress leading up to where we're at. On the other hand, it's been frustrating how slow we're developing, right? We're punching under our weight when it comes to voter turnout, like you were talking about. But the Republican Party has done a dismal job of investing in minority communities. For some reason, they stayed away, for decades. Maybe they thought their ideas would sell themselves. But Latinos need to be courted. You need to earn our vote like you earn any other Americans. And they're now stepping up in the game, and I think it's a new game. But I think as Latinos, we also have to take responsibility and be accountable to fulfill our civic responsibility and get engaged and engaged now.
And Latinos have to understand that there is power in numbers. Yes. But that power does not give us the power to then put down other people or to use that power to disenfranchise or silence other people. That we have to bring together the African American population, the Asian population, because these are systematically groups that have been disenfranchised. Right now, look at what is happening in Georgia. More than 170,000 African Americans have been had their voting rights taken away. So there's a lot of voting laws that are being put into place that really disproportionately take away the rights of colored people. And we have to start calling ourselves colored people. People out there are going to say, well, look at this, está blanquita diciendo que color. Well, who cares what the color of your skin is? Truly. And we have to embrace other minorities to understand that if we forge an alliance, we can forge that alliance with everybody and an entire rainbow of people that will make us move forward.
Raise your hand if you think, not just optimistically, but you believe in your heart we're going to see a Latino president in the next 10 years. Who thinks we'll see it?
The next 10 years.
Next 10 years. Next 20 years? Lifetime. Who realistically, even though they want it to be true, does not think we're going to see a Latino president in their lifetime? Why not?
My name is Grace. I would like to see a Latino president in my lifetime. I'm just very realistic about where things are right now in the country. I think that if it continues on this trend of continued divisiveness, it's going to be very difficult to get someone not just to run and win in the necessary states, but for the entire country to kind of like get behind that candidate. So I'm thinking about it in a more of a practical perspective.
Look, when Cesar Chavez was doing that 5-year-long strike and the United Farm Workers was born, nobody thought that realistically he would win. But as he said, it was never about the grapes. It was always about the people. And as he also said, you can't uneducate a person that has learned to read. And you can't put down a person, paraphrasing, that has no fear. So what we have to do, and my proposal is that we stop thinking that others can limit us and that we make the unthinkable be our new reality. Always somebody's gonna put us down. There will be somebody out there that will always tell us, porque eres mujer, porque eres Latina, porque eres lo que sea, you're not gonna be able to make it. But if we believe it and we own it, you know, we still have to go out there and do the marches and raise the fist. If we want to change our reality, we have to take it upon ourselves to change it.
I like the way Senator Ted Cruz says, America is still that country where anybody with nothing can achieve anything. You're looking at a high school dropout who was a farm worker up until I was 19 years of age. At 17, I was a high school dropout. Now think about that, because I worked in the fields too much. And then we migrated to California with my parents in Nebraska and the state of Washington following the crop season. 17 years later, I'm working at the White House for President George W. Bush. This is a country with so much potential. We just have to work together on breaking down those barriers. I don't doubt anymore that a Latino can be a president because even somebody like me made it to the White House. So you're absolutely right. Let's leverage our skills, our talents, our numbers, and start punching at our weight and make that difference for our community.
I want to go here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mara Rodriguez, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. My comment, I really lie in the middle of everything, but I guess my comment would be that I would love to see a Latino president or a Latina president within my time. However, I'm a little concerned and cautious because given Obama's election and Obama's presidency, it kind of paved this pathway for President Trump to be elected and for this complete backlash of the country and more racism than we had maybe beforehand. And I'm just concerned that our country's just not ready yet. That's my opinion.
My name is Guarina Torres, and I don't think the country is as racist as we are being led to believe that it is. Because if it were, Obama would have never been elected. So I don't doubt that there will be a Latino president at some time and point in the country. I've heard an awful lot of back and forth about racism and about religion, and I've heard a lot about Trump, and the fact remains that I personally did not vote for Obama. I don't regret saying it. However, he was my president for 8 years. I honored him and his family, and I think that this president has not gotten that from anyone at all because he's being made to be a racist when I honestly, truly in my heart, don't believe he is. And this is coming from a 20-year Democrat. I worked on the Clinton campaign. I've worked on Hillary's campaign. I worked on a lot of campaigns. And I don't believe Trump is a racist, never was, but this is what is being portrayed. I did not come here to listen to a bashing of the president that I respect just like I respected Obama, because that's who was elected legally and lawfully by the people.
This is not about President Trump. This is not about President Trump. this is not about President Trump. I will tell you what is eloquent, man. What is eloquent is that 3,000 Puerto Ricans died, and President of the United States went down to Puerto Rico. You may have not been there. You may have not seen it. We saw it. We felt it. He threw paper towels at us. Now, I would like anyone here to raise their hand and tell me if you think that is an honorable thing to do when people are dying. It is not. It is not. It was about bureaucracy and inefficiency. And while people were dying with no dialysis, no electricity for up to a year, no food, no water, no medication, that the leader of the free world's response was to talk about the Puerto Rican debt and not talk about the deaths. But this is not about one person. This is about whether we are going to have, as humans, the ability to move forward and to find common ground in issues like the opioid epidemics, and I can't even say that right, la epidemia de opiato, about immigration, about healthcare, about respect for women and children, and about allowing a young man in the southern part of this country to walk into a neighborhood and ask for directions and not getting shot. That is what this is about. And what are we going to do as Latinos, and what are we prepared to do to demand our seat at the table and to take it, not forcefully, but take it through the means of voting? When you vote, you exert the biggest power that anyone in any democracy can do. But in order to vote, you have to make sure that there's an agenda that you can vote for. And I don't think that anyone in here would vote against everyone having access to appropriate medical care, or everyone having access to appropriate education, or everyone having access to a fair justice system. None of us. The difference is on how do we get to that place.
Hi, my name is Melissa. When it comes to Latino president, I think what the mayor was alluding to is important. We definitely need candidates that are going to speak to the issues that motivate us and move us. We can't be seen as Latinos as just niche candidates that we only appeal to and are only going to be able to mobilize Latino communities, or that we only belong in Latino districts.
Are there any candidates who are out there today who you think have a near-term chance? In other words, we know that Julian Castro from Texas wants to run. We know that Eric Garcetti from Los Angeles is going to run.
And I think that there are many others out there we've seen incredible candidacies, right? People that have a certain value system that we want to see reflected and that speak to the issues that matter to all of us and touch at, right, the concerns that we have. So there are those candidates that can have that appeal. I think President Obama was able to make that appeal, obviously. But we're not in a post-racial society. Let's be very clear about that. We have systemic racism. It is real. It is real. It is not going away. We have to chip away and make sure that we create a more equitable society. And that is something that many of us are concerned about that live here and have been advocating for these issues. So thank you.
Thank you. Guys, final question for this audience. The first Latina president, do you think it'll be a woman or a man? Raise your hand if you think the first president will be Latina. Raise your hand. Tell me why.
My name is Jose Javier. I am from Ocasio-Cortez district. And if I can really answer the previous question, I think there's going to be a Latino president in very shortly, and it's going to be in the Republican Party. And I say that because I'm 26. Since I was 18, I've been voting, and I've been waiting for somebody that looks or sounds like me to run in the Bronx. Happened 0 times. Last year, Nicoma de Taques, una cubana, JC Polanco, a Bronxite, and then we have Cruz, and then we have Rubio. These are people that look and sound like me, and you can say whatever you want, but like that, you cannot take away that experience. And so I think it's gonna be a woman because they just...
Because we rock.
Because you rock.
Okay, final word over here.
In America, more Latinos self-identify as conservative than they do as moderate or liberal, according to the Pew Hispanic poll and the NBC Marist poll. That's who we are. And so I'm more concerned with the ideas that a person has than the color of their skin.
Thank you guys.
30 seconds.
35 seconds.
I would be remiss if I didn't thank the American people, the Latino population, and the Boricua diaspora. Because where others turned their backs on us in Puerto Rico, it was the people, the grassroots organization, the religious organizations, the non-governmental organizations, the unions, and the teachers that came to our help. So thank you all very much.
All right, we'll leave it at that. If you want to continue the conversation, please join us on Facebook. Head on over to Take on America with OZY on Facebook.com. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Very much appreciate it. Big hand for Daniel Garza and for Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz.
There's a lot of stuff that we have to talk about, and this was a good first start. It lit some fire in me because now I want to go home and talk to this about my family and like, hey guys, oh my God, this happened, and so I'm really excited.
It was wonderful. I personally, feel that things are going to get much better.
Needs to start off with authentic conversation, right? If we're not authentically engaging in conversations that are difficult, that are problematic, that we disagree upon, we will never make progress.
I thought it was a very productive discussion. I don't get to see people from the other side, so it was good to debate and argue with them. This has been really one of a kind of experience. I really, really enjoyed it.
It is important to reach out and try to find a common ground, otherwise nothing will get accomplished.
There's some people that are approaching me to talk about my beliefs and why I believe in what I said in the discussion, and so I think it's a good conversation starter.
The future is with us.
Funding for Take on America with OZY provided in part by the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, the Charles Koch Foundation, and by viewers like you. Thank you.